We welcome in now the play-by-play voice of the Baylor Bears, John Morris, joining us over Zoom. And John, you noticed as we went to break, we were showing highlights from that 1984 Baylor at BYU game during BYU's perfect season. What we didn't show is BYU losing at Baylor to open up the 1983 season in a great game. Do you remember those games?
I do. And number one, I appreciate you having me on. That's great. And I have very fond memories of both those games. 83 was here in Waco. It was a great game. It's one of the best games I've ever seen. And Baylor beat Steve Young, and BYU went down to the last second. Coach Grant Taft, it was Coach Taft and Coach Lavelle Edwards, who were very, very good friends for many, many years. And it was a big deal. I remember that with BYU coming to Waco. It was a big game, and that was a big win for Baylor. And then BYU won the game back in Provo that you showed some highlights of in '84.
John, Steve is still bothered by that loss. Like we know this. We've talked to him, and we talked about that '83 team in a show, and he was like, that one loss, man. And everyone thinks he won the national championship. That doesn't, anyway. So he's still thinking about that Baylor loss. Let's talk about what's going on in Big 12 country. Obviously, the talk of college football is Texas and Oklahoma. They want to go to the SEC. They're going to leave no later than 2025. Although if you get divorced and live in the same house, that's a little weird. So we'll see when they actually go. What's it like in Big 12 country as the rest of the other 8 teams try and navigate what's next?
Well, as you might expect, a lot of uncertainty right now, and I hate it too. I mean, I like the rivalries and the tradition and the history we have, especially with Texas. I mean, that goes back to Southwest Conference days, and really some of the greatest wins in Baylor history in all sports have been against the University of Texas, and that's a compliment to them because it's a big game. It's a big deal, if you beat Texas. And then in more recent years, Oklahoma is part of the Big 12. 2011, Robert Griffin's Heisman Trophy moment was against Oklahoma, a thrilling 45-38 win. So great, again, rivalry tradition with these teams, and I hate to see them go. But, I guess that's the world we live in these days. If you get a better offer, if you have another opportunity that you view as better, you're going to go for the money.
John Morris, the play-by-play voice of Baylor Bears football, is with us on BYU Sports Nation. Let's fast forward to 2025. Yesterday, we were trying to look into our crystal ball here in Studio B. John, what do you see the Big 12 trying to do with the pending departure of Oklahoma and Texas out there?
Well, I appreciate the question, but understand this is above my pay grade. I'm not I'm not in those meetings. I think that goes without saying. But number one, in my personal opinion, I don't think it'll drag out till 2025. Like you said, if you get a divorce, you're not going to stay in the same house with that person for 4 more years. So we'll see how that plays out. But I would say this, I think the Big 12's number one goal is to preserve the league in some form. We got 8 schools right now, 8 very good schools and very good athletic programs. Who can we add? Who maybe from Provo, Utah, who could we add, that would be a plus, a benefit? Now, it's going to be hard to find schools, the stature of Texas and Oklahoma. But, these days it's like there's no rules, name a school. All right, go after them. Things like that might be happening. So I think that's the number one goal, is to preserve the Big 12 and add some schools to get us back to 10 or hopefully 12. I think the number should be 12. The second option is, to me, not that great. It's every school splintering off, ending up, in other conferences, and then we all go our separate ways. But, again, nothing is off the table right now. I think there's a lot of options available out there.
Is there any hesitation or anxiousness associated with perhaps being left behind and not being able to get into another league? Or is there confidence that, okay, if the Big 12 didn't work out, I hope, like you, the Big 12 stays together, then, hey, we'll be okay?
Yeah, from a Baylor perspective?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I think we will be okay. I trust our leadership. President Linda Livingstone is right in the middle of this. Mac Rhodes, our athletic director, unfortunately has been through things like this before, but they have experience, and I really trust our leadership here. And I think that they, in their positions and Baylor, which has positioned itself very well, with their success of Baylor athletics the last few years. I think we positioned ourselves in a really good spot. If we have to move on somewhere else, I think Baylor would be on the inside more than on the outside looking in.
Okay, let's talk about BYU and the potential fit of the Cougars in a Big 12 that now has 8 remaining teams. What would be working against BYU for the Big 12 to invite the Cougars? Because we've laid out all the positives. We're obviously spinning it forward, trying to make BYU as attractive an option as possible. What would work against BYU?
Again, above my pay grade, but I don't see anything. I have thought for a long time that BYU would be a great addition to our league, even before any of this talk, and even before the last talk when we lost A&M, when we lost Colorado, lost Nebraska, Missouri, when those schools were leaving. Even before that, I thought BYU would be a great addition to the Big 12 conference. You guys were talking last segment about geography and about TV markets and things like that. Tell me if you agree with this. I think geography is not a factor these days. You used to think about your league and your footprint, and who are the schools in that footprint. Now I think it's the opposite. I think you look outside your footprint. You look to add, if you're going to add schools, you look to add schools in a different part of the country, a different TV market that can bring in different viewers, in different parts of the country. So BYU, checks that box very nicely in Provo there. So to answer your question, I don't see any negatives at all. I would love the opportunity. We've been there a couple of times for games, loved our trips there, and I think you and your fans, you love coming to Waco.
I think it'd be great. Magnolia Way, right? Every Utah, housewife has that book. So it's great. It's great. Can we rewind back to when the Big 12 was formed? I want to clarify something because I haven't heard, and perhaps you can shed some light on this or not, whatever. BYU fans are like, shoot, Ann Richards was a Baylor grad. She was the Texas governor. BYU had a chance to get in the original Big 12. They didn't. Baylor got in. Is there any truth to that? BYU fans have always wondered that for a long time.
Can't speak to that. Again, I wasn't in those meetings, and TCU folks felt the same way. TCU felt like Baylor got their spot in the Big 12 conference. I really don't know. I mean, we being Baylor had some really good political clout in Austin at the time. You mentioned Ann Richards. Bob Bullock was probably more powerful even than Ann Richards as lieutenant governor. And I think that helped. We had some key representatives in Austin that were going to make sure that Baylor was included in a new league, and that happened to be the Big 12. So I don't know about BYU getting, shut out by Baylor. I don't know about that. But from a Baylor perspective, it's been great. From the Southwest Conference, hated to see that end, and then move into the Big 12 and those new relationships, new rivalries in the Big 12. It's been really good from a Baylor perspective.
Listen, that's all great. We'd be fine if BYU got invited the second time around. That would be great. That would be great.
John Morris is on BYU Sports Station, the play-by-play voice for Baylor Bears football. Let's talk about this year's matchup. BYU's headed to Waco in mid-October for a game against the Bears, and preseason polls just came out. So what, in your mind, are realistic expectations for a Baylor program that's still trying to find its footing after losing head coach Matt Rule?
Well, keep in mind, Dave Aranda's our new head coach from LSU, was part of that national championship team 2 years ago as the defensive coordinator. And then Dave came here. His first year was last year, his first year at Baylor, and his first year as a head coach anywhere. And it's just unfair, that was his first year with the COVID protocols, with no spring practice for Baylor. I mean, he was getting to know his players over Zoom, couldn't even meet face-to-face with them. One of Dave's real strengths is relationships, and he couldn't even meet with the parents of the players, couldn't do that in person. So factor all that in, and then all the COVID protocols, and then just the coaching transition. And Baylor was 2-7 last year, but I think you really put an asterisk by that. And I think this year you'll get a much better barometer of Coach Aranda and his ability as a head coach. They've had a full off season. They had a spring. They're starting practice next week, August 6th is the first full day of practice. So I think we'll see a much better sampling of Coach Aranda and his ability to be a head coach. And then, the coaching changes that he made also, you guys know about that, bringing in Jeff Grimes as our offensive coordinator. What a terrific move that was, bringing him to Baylor. And Eric Mateos as our offensive line coach. Think about this. Coach Aranda went through his first year, a COVID year, yet he still didn't hesitate and made coaching changes. Everybody on the offensive staff except one person is new this year. So he saw a need for change there, a need for improvement. And what great additions Coach Grimes and Coach Mateos are to this Baylor staff.
Yeah, you're going to love him. And does Jeff still have a mustache?
Let's see. He had hip surgery. Do you know that?
No, didn't know that.
Yeah, last time I saw him, he was walking around on crutches, 2 crutches. I saw him a week later. He was down to 1 crutch. And he said, we're going the right direction. So he was a little scruffy when I saw him. I mean, there weren't many of our coaches in the office when I saw him last.
Fantastic. Okay, one last thing. Charlie Brewer's probably going to be the starting quarterback for Utah. BYU's lost 9 in a row to Utah. So what does BYU need to do to slow down Charlie Brewer in Utah? Can you give us the secret?
It's a scouting report on Charlie Brewer. Number one, I love Charlie Brewer. He had a fantastic career here and then wanted to finish up with 1 year somewhere else. So I wish him nothing but the best. Leaves us in an interesting situation. I mean, we've got 3 guys who've never started battling for the quarterback position, but I think that'll work itself out. But Charlie is just a gamer. He's a guy that will find a way to win. If it's on his legs, if it's on his arm, if it's him just making the right call, from the line of scrimmage, Charlie will find a way to win. So I wish him nothing but the best. And I hope he does well at Utah. I don't know about the game, Utah and BYU this year, but I hope Charlie does well. He's just flat out a winner.
You're not giving me a lot of confidence here, John. Hey, we appreciate the time.
That's my scouting report, and I'm sticking to it.
Great to talk with you. Can't wait to visit Waco in mid-October, and we'll see you then.
Hope you guys make it over here. That'll be fun. And to answer your question about the ticket sales for that game, that is homecoming. And homecoming is a big deal at Baylor. I know a lot of schools it's really not, but that's a big deal at Baylor. So that's why that one game does have the asterisk.
Okay. I'd rather just stick to the fact that it's BYU.
BYU fans love to put on the blind and go, look how special we are.
Let's not let details get in the way of a good story.
Facts.
Come on. Come see us for homecoming.
You got it. Thanks, John.